Okay, so I'm going to be talking about a family of our products called the Native Maps SDKs. These are formerly known as the Runtime SDKs, but we rebranded them a couple of years ago, and I have to say I much prefer the new name. They're SDKs for mobile and GIS application development. And what I want to do today is inspire you all to go home at the end of this conference and try this technology out tomorrow. So to inspire you to do that, I'm going to answer a few key questions. So we're going to look at what Native Maps SDKs are. We're going to look at which one is best for your application development, because you've got a number of 6 of them to choose from. I'll talk you through how to get started, how to get hold of some good documentation, what you can do with them, and we'll back that up with some demonstrations, and then we'll finish off by talking about something new. So we've got a new product that we're adding into our family of products called the Flutter SDK, so we'll go through that. Starting off with that first question. So I would describe the Native Maps SDKs as a set of modern SDKs that allow you as developers to embed mapping and functionality into your own applications. So these can be a client to the ArcGIS platform, so they can consume feature services or web maps you've already created in the Esri stack. But you don't have to be bought into the Esri technology to use these SDKs, because we also support open formats as well. So you can support web feature services or web map services, for example. Now, by native applications, I'm talking about the kind of applications that you would get from an app store, and you would install and run that on your device. So I'm not talking about web applications that run inside a web browser. These are applications that run physically on your machine. And we've got SDKs that allow you to be able to write these for both mobile and desktop, so mobile for Android or iPhones or iPads. And we also support the 3 major desktop platforms, Windows, Linux, and Mac. It's actually worth saying that we use these products internally for creating our own products. So Survey123 and Field Maps are actually written using the Maps SDKs. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that before you start writing an application, I would really recommend you take a look at these 2 apps that we've put a lot of effort into creating, because if they do what you want to do already, you've just saved yourself a lot of effort. But assuming you do want to write an application, I would strongly recommend it. There's a couple of different approaches to writing native applications. So you can actually go for one of the dedicated SDKs. So this is where you would write an application specifically for the platform you're wanting to deploy to. So Kotlin is our SDK for writing Android applications, and you would use that for writing a best-of-breed application for an Android device using Android Studio and Kotlin Compose. And then on the other side of the fence, if you wanted to write an iPhone or an iPad application, you'd use our Swift API using Xcode. Again, creating the best-of-breed application for that particular platform. One of the problems with this is that although you're creating the very best user experience, if you've created an application for an iPhone and somebody comes along and says, I want this to work on Android, it does mean you have to start again from scratch using a different development platform and rewrite your application. So pretty much doubling the development costs there. So another approach, which a lot of people like, with a fairly small amount of compromise for the UI experience that you have, is to use one of the cross-platform technologies. So we've got 2. We've got .NET, which will allow you, as a C# developer, to be able to write a .NET MAUI application that you could deploy to Windows or desktop platforms. But we've also got a Qt API, which using C++ and Qt Creator, you'd be able to create, again, platforms, applications that you can deploy to mobile or desktop applications. I will acknowledge that we do have a Java API, which is for writing cross-platform desktop applications, but I would actually discourage anybody from using that for any new projects, because we're deprecating that at the end of the year. The .NET and the Qt APIs are perfectly valid alternatives for that. So for a new project, don't use Java for the moment. And then, of course, whilst we're taking away a less used product, we're bringing in a new Flutter-based API. So this is sort of a Google cross-platform development IDE that allows you to write mobile applications. We'll take a look at that. It's currently in beta. So in terms of getting started, the best place for you to go to is our developers website. So this is developers.arcgis.com. So if I just go to that website, and if you go to the documentation page, you've got the landing page for all of our developer technologies here. So whether you're wanting to write JavaScript applications or making a premium rendering experience with one of our game engine IDEs, it's all there, but we're going to be looking at the native SDKs. So I'll go and take a look at the Swift API for writing Apple-based applications. But what I would say is the structure of the documentation, and in fact the functionality, is identical for all of these. So what you can do with one, you can achieve with another. So going into Swift, so this is writing Apple-based applications. If I scroll down, probably the best starting point is to go to one of the tutorials. So these are step-by-step guides that would allow you, potentially as a new developer, having never used Xcode before, to follow through these steps to be able to create your own very basic application to stick a basic map on an application. And then we've got other concept documentation that explains common use cases for bringing in maybe 3D visualization into your applications. As well as the doc, we complement that with a set of sample applications that we've written. And these are all open source, so you can pull these from GitHub and run them on your device. And if you like that piece of functionality, you can just take the code out of that and put it into your own application in the knowledge that this is best practice for implementing this particular use case. So that's a good reference point. We've got API reference that explains all the classes, methods, and events associated with the API. And then we've also got a toolkit for each of the SDKs. So these are additional UI components which allow you to add in things like scale bars or north arrows into your applications. So they're ready to go. You can just put them straight in, but they're open source. So if you wanted to be able to customize them or change the color of them or something like that, pull the source code, compile it, and then bring that into your application. So that gives you a really good starting point for writing your own fully functional Maps SDK application. In terms of what you can do with the SDKs, so we're here, it's an Esri conference. It won't come as any surprise to you that you can visualize your data in 2D maps or 3D scenes. And once you've got that visualization, you can then build up the GIS capabilities in the application that you're creating. So that could be things like routing on a cycle network, or geocoding, calculate operations with addresses, or maybe bits of spatial analysis. So maybe you're a utility company wanting to understand what happens when I take the fuse out of an electric transmission network. Maybe you want to do some 3D analysis with line of sight or viewshed calculations, or many more. Now, the runtime SDKs can support data from both server sources, so OGC or feature services or maps, web maps that you've created, but we also support local file formats that you can sideload onto the device. And this is a very powerful story because it means you can have applications that work without any network connectivity. So what I'm going to do now is hand you over to Rachael, who's going to talk you through the basics of writing an application for an iPad in this case.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
Switch over.
So yeah, for the next few minutes, I'm going to show you some examples of what you can do with the Native Maps SDK. And to do that, I'm going to be using the Swift Maps SDK. So just now, we're looking at the Xcode IDE, which is what you would use to build any Apple iOS-based applications. The principles that I'm going to talk through are the same for any of the other Native Maps SDK, but we're just using Swift as an example for today. So to get started, to build your first ever mapping app, what you would do is, first of all, import the ArcGIS libraries into your application. So this import ArcGIS here is what gives you, the developer, access to your ArcGIS Maps SDK capabilities. And then with the first mapping application, all we're going to do is build an app that will allow you to display a map on a device. There are two key components to this when working with the Native Maps SDK, and the first of that is the map class. Here in the Swift code, I am instantiating a new map object, and that map object is being constructed here with a base map, in this case accessing the imagery base map from ArcGIS. I can then also set an initial viewpoint to the map so that when the application loads, it will load within a particular place on Earth, And in this example, we will be zooming into where we are right here today in the QE2 in London. The map needs somewhere to live, and it needs somewhere that a user can interact with that. So we host the map within a map view object. And what the map view is, it's a UI component that allows a user to interact with the app via touch gestures on the device and displays the map. So moving on to the iPad, I have an iPad up here on the stage. We are now looking at the application that I've just developed using that simple code. And as you can see, we have an imagery base map displaying the QE2 center in the middle of the iPad. Now, what I'll do when I'm up here is just give you an example of some of the other features that you can use in the Native Maps SDK. This is one of our more recently released features, which is clustering. So as you can see, there's rather a lot of points here on this map. This is a feature layer that I created on ArcGIS Online, and it displays the locations of electrical vehicle charging points across the City of London. So there's a lot of points. It's quite hard to be able to see any sort of meaningful data analysis from this. So if I just enable feature clustering, you get a much clearer view of where the electrical vehicle charging points are clustered. And in this case, it's particularly around the western side of London in Hammersmith. Now, with this being the Native Maps SDK, you can tap into the hardware that you get with the device itself. So in this case, I'm using the GPS that's built into the iPad, and I can show where my device location is. So that's really great for being able to collect data in your location. And then finally, we've talked a bit about 3D. So what I'm going to give a demonstration of here is one of our augmented reality examples. So you might be able to see some of you in the audience there in the background. And what I've got here is a 3D scene, which is showing a 3D scene layer. And it's making the most of ARKit that comes with the Apple devices, and it allows you to navigate around a 3D scene on top of a table. And with that, I'll pass back to Mark to talk about some offline capabilities.
Okay. So the very portable nature of the devices that we're deploying applications to here, we recognize that people want to be able to take these devices out into the field to view and edit data, even if you haven't got very good or none at all network connectivity. So one of the good things about the Native Maps SDKs is we do support these offline editing workflows. So we support this in a couple of different ways. We've got, for a single user, as a user of ArcGIS Pro, you can create map packages that you can sideload onto the device and be able to view your data when you have no network connectivity. Or if you want to incorporate an editing workflow, you can create a mobile geodatabase and take that out of ArcGIS Pro, sideload it onto the device, edit your data, and then bring it back into Pro again. So that works very well for a single user, but very often organizations have much larger groups of users who go out into the field. So for that, we support the editing of data which you've authored in ArcGIS Online or Enterprise. So if you've got a web map and you've set that web map so that it's sync enabled, what you can do is with the Maps SDK, you can make a request to the server to say that I'm going to go offline in this particular geographic area. And then the server will create you a mobile map package that you download onto the device so that when you're out in the field and you start up the application without any network connection, you'll be able to view and also be able to edit your data. And then at the end of the day, when you've got that network connectivity back, you can synchronize any of the changes that you've made back into the enterprise web map, so everyone else will be able to see the data that you've been working on. So this is a very powerful example of why you would use a Maps SDK application as opposed to a JavaScript application, for example. And this will scale to hundreds or maybe thousands of users. So that kind of brings us close to the end of this presentation, where we've been looking at the native Maps SDKs, talking about what they are, so they're apps that run physically on your machine. We've talked about which SDKs you can use, so you can either go down the the route of writing a dedicated application, which gives you the best of breed for Android or iPhone, or you can use one of the cross-platform technologies. And we've also taken a look at what they can do, visualizing data in 2D or 3D or augmented reality, and we've also covered a little bit about the offline editing of data. So I'm going to hand you back now to Rachael, who's just going to take you on a little bit of a guided tour of a new product that we've currently got out in beta, our Flutter API.
Yeah, so we're really excited to share that we do have a new Native Maps SDK now available in beta for access, and that's the ArcGIS Maps SDK for Flutter. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Flutter, it's an open source framework that was built by Google. And it's a cross-platform app development framework. So you can use a single code base, and you can deploy to both iOS and Android. And for this beta, we are supporting both of those platforms. Flutter has been so popular amongst developers because of its extensive tooling options and many productivity benefits within the Flutter framework itself. And it has a really rapid development cycle as well. One of those productivity features is that of hot reload, which I'll give an example of in a few moments. And it just allows you to be able to tweak your user interface really quickly and be able to design your app. So the beta program is now available to download. We have this QR code here, but we'll show it again at the end if you don't quite have time to access it just now. So if we just switch over to my machine, then what I'll do is quickly show you some code for Flutter and show you some examples. I think that we maybe just have to plug back in again. Yeah, the magic trick.
Yeah, give it a second.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you.
It's alive, good.
So on the left-hand side of the screen, I have two mobile emulators open. This one on the left is an iPhone emulator, and this one on the right is an Android emulator. And we're showing a base map, set base map sample, which allows you to change the base map in your Maps SDK app. And to demonstrate the hot reload feature, what I'm going to do is, I'm not very happy with the design of this button that's in the lower right-hand side of the screen. It's purple, it's at the bottom right, I don't like it. So using Flutter's hot reload, I'm going to reposition that button up to the top right. And as you can see, the UI reacts pretty quickly, and you get a really rapid prototyping of what your UI could look like. I'm just going to take that one step further because I'm still not happy with the color and with the design. So again, just changing out some code, I can update the design of my application and really tweak it to my needs as a developer. So that's the Flutter Maps SDK. Like we said, it's now available to access via the early adopter site on Esri, so you can go to that today and sign up and start prototyping. Meanwhile, you can find the rest of the Native Maps SDK on developers.arcgis.com. And if you want to come and ask any questions after this event, we will be downstairs in the tech zone at the technical session stand. So please come and ask us any questions. Thank you very much. And,
Thank you.